Okay, last time we left off, after part one, we were into the mortgage contingency. If you haven't watched part one, make sure you watch that first, just so it kind of goes in order. This is going to be the second half of how to write an offer. Not that you're going to have to write it, but you're going to need to know the terms when I reference them. So if you elect a mortgage, like you need a mortgage to buy the property, this is where pre-approval comes in. So you can get mortgage on the property different ways, but a pre-approval gives the most likely way that you're going to be obtaining that loan. So the realtor goes ahead and puts all of that information in there. That lets the seller know how you plan to pay for the house. All right. All of that goes into details about what happens if you're not able to obtain the loan, if you're not able to get the mortgage commitment. Again, if you have a contingency there, a contingency allows you to get your deposit back if that requirement is not made or met. Okay. And then this is just the type of water and sewer. If there's any land preservation laws, houses, for example, in our area have historic preservation restrictions. So you can't tear down properties. You can only build certain kinds of properties on certain land. So a lot of properties, you don't need to worry about that. And you'll know that in advance. Here are all of the inspections that you may need to be familiar with. So this first one is the regular property inspection. When you hear the word home inspection, this is where they go through the house. An inspector goes through the house inside and out. They check the windows, they check the roof, they check structurally, is there anything that's standing out to them? General electric systems, water heater, things like that. Are there any gas leaks? So that's general information. So from there, you may then need to get another person to look at the property if you hear something might be wrong with it. I'll go into that in another video, but this is just if you're electing the home inspection, you would pick that here, or the realtor would. They'll have initials on whichever side it is, whether you're waiving it or electing it. Wood infestation is termites. Then you have, if there's any deed restrictions, if you aren't sure and you want to pursue that and find out if it's going to prevent you from buying the property, if there are certain restrictions, then you want to find out those things. Water service. This is mainly if you're concerned about the water for any reason. A lot of people do this with well water. And then radon, pretty common in our area. So if a radon test comes back high, you might need to ask the seller to do a radon remediation system. They're usually about $1,500, but the seller at that point needs to do that. And then this is if you had a septic system on the property, or the property you were going to buy has a septic system. You obviously want to get that checked out. Sometimes townships and municipalities have their own set of requirements in terms of doing a septic inspection, but there is one here for you as well. And then property and flood insurance. So if I just showed a house in a flood zone recently, the buyer was concerned about how much money it was going to be per month to get additional flood insurance. So you can elect to use that as well. And then if you're not happy with what you get back in terms of insurance companies, you're allowed to get that deposit back. And then property boundaries. If you are wanting to know exactly where a boundary is, and that's going to influence whether or not you buy the house, then you're going to elect that. You can always do that at a later time, though. And then any house built before 1978 can get a lead-based paint inspection. You're also going to get a disclosure saying whether the seller knows of any history of lead-based paint. And if you choose to do a lead-based paint inspection, that's totally up to you. This is where we talk about how long the inspection contingency period is. They give it 10 automatically. So if I don't fill anything in here, it's going to be 10. But I usually like to do a little bit less because it makes your offer a little bit more desirable to the seller. So if I put like 7 days in here, that's the period of time that we have to get an inspector out there, or surveyor, whatever type of inspection you elected, the time period to get out there so that they can evaluate the house. And then also so you can bring in whoever else you need to look at the house. So if something is wrong with electric, let's say, and you want an electrician to look at it, that's where you need to account for that. So 7 is usually a pretty safe amount of days because it gives you long enough to get an inspector out and hopefully long enough to have somebody, a more specified contractor, look at something. All right. You also have to reply during that time. So, I'll go ahead and write up a reply to inspections, what's called reply to inspections. I'll do that in another video, but it basically is what you want the seller to do based on what you found out after your inspection. Okay. And then you have some time to negotiate back and forth. The seller comes back to you as a buyer saying, this is what we're agreeing to do, or this is how much money we're agreeing to give you, or how much we're going to lower the price, or we're going to do nothing. And then you go from there and decide whether you want to proceed or how you'd want to proceed with the purchase, if at all. If you're doing a survey, same kind of situation there. Up. All right. So this is for municipal requirements. So the seller has to get usually like a use and occupancy, and they pay for that from the township. You as a buyer also have a right to know what was in that initial inspection by the township and know the seller's response to that. So if they say they need to get concrete fixed, let's say, and the seller said, no, I'm not going to do that, you have a right to kind of take that on yourself conditionally or terminate the contract. And here would be if there's some sort of HOA involved, condo fee or HOA fee. A lot of this is just legalese, not written by realtors, written by lawyers, so we can't change any of it. You can, however, kind of cross it off if you both agree. This is where it discusses the money, the deposit money. So there will be some sort of mediation if there's ever a time where the deposit money is in contention. So if the seller thinks they're entitled to the deposit money and the buyer thinks they are, a lot of times that is not the case. It just gets released because the buyer terminates in the contingency period. But if for whatever reason there is a discrepancy over who gets that, it'll go to mediation typically. Okay, and then over here are some other addendums that might get sent along with the offer itself. And I'll touch on some of these in a later video. All right, bottom is just the forms, disclosures, and so on and so forth that you'll have to sign as well if you haven't done so before you write the offer. And then we send this out to you as agents. You initial everything, date it, e-sign it, and we send that over with your offer. Along with the offer, you're going to look at the seller's disclosure. If there's a lead-based paint disclosure, you're going to initial those as well so that we know you saw them and the seller knows you saw them and you're aware of the condition of the property. And that is the gist of the second half of an offer. Hopefully that's helpful to you. If you found this helpful, and only if you found it helpful, okay, please like and subscribe to this to get more education sent your way.